Change is inevitable. Change is also the principle of life. That means everything that is alive will change. And even things that are not alive will change. You know, a lady came to me. She says, I came to the Bahamas for the last 10 years and I missed 4 years. And I came here this past month and everything is different. The airport is new, she said. What happened to the old airport, she says. In other words, even the things not alive are changing. The way the river runs down the mountain is wearing away the mountain. You go back to that mountain 10 years later and the river is wider. Yes. Change is in creation. It's part of life. So here is the question then. Ecclesiastes chapter 3. It says, to everything there is a season, and to every purpose under heaven there is a time for it. To everything there's a season. How many things have a season? Everything. This is one of the best news I ever got in my life. When I understood this, I was a teenager and it changed my life. When I understood that everything is a season, let me tell you why. If you're having a bad time right now, it cannot last. If you cannot find a job right now, that is only a season. If your business is going in the wrong direction, it's a seasonal slide. If nobody wants to marry you, that's only a season. There's going to come a season when everybody want to marry you. You got choices. If you have no money right now, the good news is I am seasonally broke. Tell your neighbor, it's only for a time. That's the good news. And that's why we are always reminded, never make a permanent decision in a temporary problem.
They say self-discipline is the magic power that makes you virtually unstoppable. Do you have the inner strength to say no when so many others say yes? See, self-discipline begins with the mastery of your thoughts. If you don't control what you think, it's virtually impossible to control what you do. So my question for you is, how often are you exercising your self-discipline muscle? I know you talk a good game, but when it's time to do what you say you're gonna do, are you getting it done? Are you strong enough to go hang out with your friends to 2 in the morning knowing you have to be up at 7 in the morning? Or do you hit the snooze button? Because if you hit that snooze button, that's essentially the lose button. And you've set yourself up to lose for that day. But on the other hand, if you rise and shine and you get on up and grind, you feel like you've won that day. You feel like you've conquered. Self-discipline is a key ingredient to success in every phase of our lives. Self-discipline is strength. So I need you to flex your self-discipline muscle. Because at the center of bringing any dream into fruition is a little thing we like to call self-discipline. But Fry, I really don't feel like doing it right now. You don't get it. You will never always be motivated to do the things that you're supposed to do on a daily basis. That's why you have to learn to be disciplined. The greatest leaders, the greatest minds, the greatest entertainers, the greatest athletes always have self-discipline without exception. So no excuses, because they're absolutely no different than you. And you will find that when you exercise your self-discipline muscle on a daily basis, you will go from below average to average, from average to good, from good to great, and from great to phenomenal. Yes, you, ordinary you want to lose that weight. You want to get that six-pack. You want to get that job promotion. You want to graduate, bachelor's, master's, PhD. All success starts with self-discipline. It starts with you. The great Lou Holtz said, without self-discipline, success is impossible, period. But we're in the business of making the impossible possible. And that means you gotta do something when you don't feel like doing it, and that's the definition of having massive self-discipline. Self-discipline. The road may be hard, but the results are priceless.
So, but the habits you develop, and I go back, the other thing is have the right heroes. I mean, I've always been lucky in that respect. And if the people you look up to are going to form your vision of what the world, how you want to be in later life. And I'll give you two pieces of advice. I'd invest as much in myself as you can. I mean, you're your own biggest asset by far. I mean, you've got all kinds of potential. All the people in this room, you're lucky to be in this country, gotten a good education, but most people go through life using up a very, very small part of their potential. And so anything you do that invests in yourself, that's the best investment you can possibly make. And then I would follow my passion. I mean, whatever turns you on. I was lucky. I found something early that turned me on. But you don't want to take a job just for the money. You don't want to take a job for an organization that you really don't feel good about, or work for people that you don't feel good about. You really want to be excited when you get out of bed every morning. And it won't necessarily be the job that you have 10 years later, but you'll be learning so much as you go along. And I took a job with Ben Graham, my hero, and I never asked the salary, and I found at the end of the month when I got my first paycheck what I was earning, because I just knew it was the right thing to be doing. So I would follow your passion. The worst investment I ever made? How long do you have? Well, I've made some very bad ones, but that doesn't really bother me. It may bother the shareholders, but that's another question. You're going to make mistakes in life. I mean, there's no question about it. You don't want to make them on the big decisions, who you marry and some things like that. So there's no way I'm going to make a lot of business and investment decisions without making some mistakes. I may try to minimize them. I don't dwell on them at all. I don't look back. The biggest mistakes are the ones that actually don't show up. They're the mistakes of omission rather than commission. We've never lost that much money on any one investment, but it's the things that I knew enough to do that I didn't do. We have missed profits of as much as maybe $10 billion in things that I knew enough to do and I didn't do. Now, the fact I didn't buy Microsoft way back is not a foregone opportunity, because I didn't know enough to make that decision. But there have been other investments where I did know enough to make the decision, and for one reason or another, I either didn't do it at all, or I did it on a small scale. I was sucking my thumb when I should have been writing checks, basically. And those don't show up. There's no place where it shows missed opportunities, but I've missed some big ones. The triumphs in life are partly triumphs because you know that everything isn't going to be a triumph. And I would never get too hung up on mistakes. I know a lot of people that really agonize over them, and it just isn't worth it. I mean, tomorrow's another day, and you live it forward and just go on to the next thing.
Here, when you started your company, you wanted to make just enough money to stay broke, right? I mean, who wants that, right? Nobody wants that. So this guy messages me on Twitter, and he says, you sure talk about money a lot. You talk about money a lot in your tweets. You talk about money in all your social media. I said, man, this guy's really following me here. I mean, but that's great. So that's great. But he says, money won't make you happy. And I said to him, well, not making money won't make you happy either, right? I've tried being broke and busted. It was a disaster of an experiment. Wouldn't you agree? Hey, how many have been broke, right? How many know that having money is better than not having money, right? Yeah, right? I mean, that's a given, right? How many know that this is a prospecting tool, your phone, right? I mean, this is, if you're still doing business like it's 2009 in a 2016 world, things need to change, okay? I'll tell you what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to tweet this. Take a picture. Now, let's see how long this takes. Let's see how long this takes. Gugliaro, C-O-N I-G-L-I-A-R-O. Now watch this. How long did that take? A few seconds, right? 87,000 people, plus or minus, are going to see that tweet today. Okay, you want to be everywhere. You want to take massive amounts of action. Okay, it's not enough to just say, well, people in my little town know about me. No, you want people everywhere talking about you. Today I want to talk about taking massive amounts of action. Okay, there's 4 quadrants when it comes to taking massive amounts of action. The first quadrant is no action. How many of you guys know no action? I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to make any phone calls. I'm going to wait for all the business to come to me. I'm really not going to do anything to put myself out there. I'm just going to wait for it all to come to me. How many of you know no action? How many of you know people that take no action? And then they complain that business isn't coming to them, right? I like to call that taking massive amounts of action, but towards the negative, right? You know, everybody's taking massive amounts of action, but some people don't do anything with it. Here's the second thing. Second quadrant is taking a normal amount of action. Okay, that's just kind of going through the motions, showing up to work. Oh, I work 9 to 5. I'll call this customer if I have to. You know, normal amounts of action. How many of you been there? How many ever feel like that? I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm with you. Third quadrant is taking average amounts of action. Now average, now this is interesting because it kind of gets a little subjective here. What do I mean by taking average amounts of action? Okay, what I mean is whatever I think or whatever you think your market's doing, the guys that are in your industry that you're competing against day in and day out, you're thinking, I'm probably going to take the same amount of activity towards my business as they do. So we're going to call that average. Now, why? Now, who here wants to compete with their competition? Who wants to compete? Do you want to compete or do you want to dominate? We want to dominate, right? We want to crush it, right? You know, you got to take pictures with your customers. Take your picture with your arm around your customer, saying this, send them the link to your Facebook page, send them the link to your Twitter account, then they're going to start following you. Then all of a sudden they get hooked on you, right? You want to keep your customers addicted to you. They're like, hey, I just text my customers every now and again saying, hey, we just put up a new car gallery. Maybe your car is on, maybe a picture of your car is there. You know, 9 times out of 10, it's not their car. But they're like, oh, maybe he's got a picture of my car. You know, because these people, they love their cars, right? They wouldn't hire us if they didn't love their vehicles. So they feel like, hey, they're part of your show, right? Keeping your customers addicted to it's huge. How many of you know that you got to cut through all the noise? This is a noisy world, right? You got to cut through all that noise. I know some guy says to me about 3 weeks ago, we were doing one of these. This guy says to me,